I've done films based on books and comic books and original material, but this is my first film based on a true event. I was shooting it in Berlin, where it happened, and so to be able to give it that texture, that sense of the tapestry of the time.
I think all of us who work with Brian are massive history buffs to begin with. But coming here, the tragedy of the history here is something that really physically manifests itself.
To be in those places was absolutely invaluable. I think not only for me playing the character, but for telling the story.
We want to be accurate and true to the facts, which is difficult from the outset because it's not 1944 anymore. How do you recreate something that's no longer in existence?
Berlin in the spring of 1944 was nearing total destruction. It had been heavily bombed throughout the war years.
Most of the original structures, most of the sense of what the city was at that time, it was gone.
Even if you find one building, there'd be one building on an entire block of modern buildings.
And the more that we scouted Berlin and the surrounding neighborhoods like Potsdam, we were able to find places that actually are a part of history.
There's a few which we've been very fortunate to film at. We filmed at the former Luftwaffe headquarters, which is now the Ministry of Finance. We filmed at another building, which is Tempelhof Airport.
Background, action!
The Messe Hall, Berlin, which is still in existence, which was built by the Nazis for the World Fair in 1933.
Action!
We used the real exterior of the Stauffenberg house for the exterior of the Stauffenberg house. We couldn't go inside because it's now 4 different flats instead of one singular interior, but nonetheless, the cobblestones are the same cobblestones, the lamps are the same gas lamps, and the exteriors of the homes are the same homes that were there when Stauffenberg walked down that street with his family.
The military hospital, that was a great find. A part of the actual ward that we were filming in was for respiratory problems. And I think that Hitler supposedly was actually treated there at one point. But it had been left for about the last 11 years. So it was in a really bad state of disrepair. It's amazing how fast buildings can decay once they're not inhabited. But it was nice to be able to transform it.
Any problem on Earth can be solved with a careful application of high explosives.
One of the extraordinary things is that when they were looking for the house where they conspired, they found a suitable period house, substantial house obviously, and were preparing to shoot in it and at the very last minute they switched to another appropriate, suitable period, substantial house, which unbeknownst to anybody turned out to be the house where they actually plotted.
We discovered after we got the location that Stauffenberg had actually been there.
We have to kill Hitler.
A member of the crew showed up with his great aunt, who was 81 years old, and started telling us stories of how she lived in that house.
It was her family home, and her father was part of the resistance. She actually lost her father after the July 20th plot. Her father was killed. We spent many hours hearing the stories and looking at the photos and realizing that these men were there in that place. Things like that were happening all the time during the making of this picture.
This is a military operation. Nothing ever goes according to plan.
Most of our sets have been locations.
For example, a lot of the scene takes place in our war ministry, which is on set. It's about 1,000 square meters.
Führer is fine. That is a lie.
Adolf Hitler is dead. Operation Valkyrie is in effect.
The Wolf's Lair, obviously, we didn't shoot in Poland, but it's a German forest.
And that's obviously brings up all kinds of different things because you're trying to build something outdoors, which took Hitler 2 years, and I think he had 2,000 Polish workers. But we had considerably less time and considerably less resources. So we have an amazing set decorator on the film called Bernhard Heinrich, who has managed to get all kinds of artifacts from all over Germany, from Vienna, from England, some stuff from the States, from collectors, from museums, from just about everywhere.
If you go to Brandt's office, this is real stuff. First you do a big research, and then you find out how everything was looking like, and then you try to find the stuff, and then, of course, you end up finding the real stuff. I actually did not specifically look for, what Hitler had on his desk or what he was using. You just, after the research you have to do for every location, you look for the cliché, how this should look like, and then you look for the real stuff, and then finally you end up with finding some Nazi eagles, swastikas, and that kind of stuff.
Very important for this film was we wanted to give it a sense of reality. So it's not a sense that you're looking back at something that happened 50, 60 years ago. What we wanted to try and do was bring it to a contemporary audience with a contemporary feel.
As a producer, I can tell you it ended up costing more because we had to recreate that world, and if we had gone to someplace like St. Petersburg or Prague or something, or even Budapest, it would have been less expensive for us. But it was the right choice, and I think that sense of history that you live walking the streets of Berlin infuses both the performances and also the way that Brian is directing the picture.
Very often films of this era are muddied or made to look like black and white because that's how we've seen them in newsreels. But in reality, Germany had a lot of architecture, design, color, and detail that I wanted to show people that they might not have seen before.